Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. I'm your host, Eric Fisher, and this is the show where I talk to the people behind the productivity. This week I'm talking to the co-founder and CEO of FreshBooks, the world's #1 cloud accounting software for self-employed professionals. If FreshBooks sounds familiar, it's probably because you're a podcast listener and you've either heard them have ad spots on this very show or on a number of other podcasts. I've been extremely appreciative of FreshBooks support in the past, and in this conversation with Mike Mcderment, we talk about the importance of culture and specifically the culture he's set up at FreshBooks. We talk about one of the unique things that they do at FreshBooks, which is using blind dates to create a collaborative workspace. And then we get into from the macro level of the company down into the micro level of how Mike as a CEO is productive on a daily basis. So let's jump right into this conversation with Mike Mcderment. This week, it's my privilege to welcome to the show Mike Mcderment, the co-founder and CEO of FreshBooks. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. Great to be here.
So I'm going to start off and just say I've been super appreciative of I've been doing this show 6 years. I know at least back as far as 3 to 4 years ago, I've had consistently on and off again FreshBooks as a sponsor for the show. So, I just got to say thanks to that, first and foremost, because it's been awesome.
Thank you. There's all kinds of people out there who are trying to make the most of their lives and their time, and you're helping with that. So we're glad to sort of support you in those efforts for the many people, FreshBooks customers and not, who are trying to put their time to good use.
Without going into like a sales pitch, what is FreshBooks?
Okay. Ridiculously easy to use invoicing and accounting software that's in the cloud, so you can access it on any device. As I like to say, if you invoice, you need FreshBooks. We don't do retail. We don't do restaurants. We're just built for people who send invoices, get paid for their time and expertise. And we serve people with no employees up to people with a lot of employees.
Perfect. Yeah, hey, that's probably one of the more succinct sales pitches I've ever seen. So, the next time FreshBooks is a sponsor, I'm coming back here and I'm going to copy that text out. So,
okay, good deal. Thank you.
I think you might be the first time I've had an actual CEO. I mean, other people have maybe claimed that, and they're a CEO of their small business, but you're a large business and you're the CEO. So this is a little bit interesting to me, talking to you as someone who's probably the person I've talked to who's in charge of the most people, or has the most team members, I should say. So kind of from a macro level, you've got a lot of insight. And I know FreshBooks is an insanely useful tool in and of itself, but you guys as a company have this view of putting culture, or you do at least, putting culture as your #1 priority. Why is that?
Yeah, I was infected very early on as an entrepreneur with this notion that the culture really matters. And I had a couple just data points where I had an advisor who was like, "Oh, culture eats strategy for breakfast," and I was like, frankly, I don't even understand what that means at the time, because I'd never worked anywhere else. I didn't really get it, but. If you think about culture as the thing that happens when nobody's looking, right? And then you think about trying to grow and scale. It's the behaviors of a group of people, really, again, when no one's looking. What's the default set of patterns? And if you think about, we've always been obsessed with customer experience. Then the art of it is I'm certainly not overseeing every interaction of every person in the company. But if we want to have, we have this, our credo is execute extraordinary experiences every day, whether it's building products, how we answer the phone on service, the experience we want you to have if you're working with a salesperson. As a FreshBooker, an employee, we want your career here to, feel really good every day and you be excited to come into work. So this 4E mantra really matters. And since, as much as I care about it, I can't be there for every interaction. The question then becomes, well, how do you build a culture that continuously reproduces, that ethos? So your customers are having great experiences delivered to them through software. So your employees are really excited and proud to be a member of the team. And so that's, that I came to understand, that the culture is kind of the difference on a lot of these things. And it's this intangible, hard to measure thing that makes, two seemingly identical companies in a same category actually be completely different in terms of their ability to compete, their ability to, deliver an experience for their employees that those employees love. So that's the long-winded answer to your question, I suppose.
What kind of are the values or the ethos that you have as your FreshBooks culture?
That ethos is really execute extraordinary experiences every day. You need a little more. So that's the directional. That's kind of like the North Star of every moment is like, hey, was that we call it 4E, a 4E experience for, whoever you were interacting with. And then it's helpful to have some guardrails. So we do have a series of values that are kind of get more specific around, hey, how does a FreshBooker conduct themselves? And we call those values Porch Fest. It's an acronym. And so, things like, lots of companies have passion as a value. The difference would be with us is how we define it, which is, we're continuously working on our craft. If we weren't doing it here, we'd be doing it somewhere else. So we want to get people with a learning orientation who love what they do so much. They're going to be, reading about it and trying to improve when they go home at night. Because, I have a belief the world's changing really fast. And, you can't pay somebody to want to learn what it is you need them to learn. They have to intrinsically want that. And so, we look to hire those people. We look to foster an environment where that passion is both rewarded and encouraged. That would be an example if you took one of our values and sort of exploded it a little bit.
Very cool. So, you said it a couple of times now, and it's 4 E's, and execute extraordinary experiences every day. Is that
yes,
it?
Sir.
Got it. Okay. So, that's still, one, I love the alliteration there. I love that it's easy to remember because, see, I've only heard it twice and now I've got it. How do you plant the seeds of that? And, is there any kind of measurement? Like you say, yes, we have this culture, but how do you really know you have that culture?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the hard thing about culture is like, it doesn't show up on an Excel spreadsheet, which is really kind of makes it challenging in many regards. And so the first thing is it starts with belief. Like you got to believe, you got to want to believe. And, I think you got to bring people in who may just be so crazy as to believe, and then help them believe, and then sustain that belief with how you behave. So let me take those high level words and turn it into some more specific stuff. So, recruiting and hiring and finding people who, are attracted to the kind of place we're trying to build, and perhaps more importantly, why we're trying to build it. Who we believe, will, left to their own devices, behave in a similar way. They may have completely different political views. It's not about homogeny. It's around sort of fundamental values. And when push comes to shove, like, hey, do you stand firm on, yes, this matters for a customer, or are you going to capitulate and be like, this is the best thing for the bottom line? I don't care about the customer. So you're hiring and you're looking for that. Then when people join the company, everyone actually spends their first month in customer service. And that is at once a surprise, but also probably part of, what leads us to the magic place. Like, how do we imbue in people what it means to deliver 4E? And so that, our customer service team, again, back to how do you know? Well, you know it when you feel it. I know it when I talk to people who are coming out of their first month, if they feel differently about this thing, if they feel supported while they're here. Those are, some anecdotal kinds of ways. We compete with people in the industry like Zappos and Rackspace for top customer service awards, and, repeatedly win those. We've got a whole trophy case. So, may not be known, but, we compete, against others of our peers and sort of the standard we're looking to set on service. And so that's one way we know we win, and we participate in things like Great Places to Work surveys like Google and Facebook and all those folks. They compete in like Fortune 500. We're less than 1,000 employees. That's where we compete, and we win those. And those are sort of as determined by employees through data across 50 countries, that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a mix, and in between it's culture.
I love the idea of putting people in a customer service role for their first, they hit the ground running in kind of in the trenches almost high pressure. I mean, you're dealing directly with a customer, and especially if that's not necessarily what you've been hired to do, it gives you that kind of cross pollination of ideas and experiences of what somebody else in the company is doing.
I agree. I believe in what I call customer proximity, and the further you get away from your customer and the less time you spend with them, fundamentally, the more detached your decision making, and I think that generally leads to decay, in my experience. So yeah, getting people to spend time with customers up front pays off a lot. And one of the things we work at are finding other ways to get people reintroduced to the customer over and over again over the years.
I know one of the other cool things that you do, which also involves kind of a cross-pollination experience, is this idea of having your employees go on blind dates together. Now, that's not like literal blind dates, but it's blind, coffee or lunch dates.
Yeah, that's right. We call it blind dates, but it's really around, hey, you can put your hat in a ring and say, I'd like to meet some other people at the company. And we do this little matchmaking service, and it's groups of 3 or 4. So it's not, it's not like 2 people going out on a quote unquote date. It's a group of people who will grab coffee. Maybe it's 2:30 in the afternoon in our kitchen. Maybe they'll go out to lunch. And the idea is we, and then when I say we, it's the people who choose to. It's a volunteer thing. They came out of nowhere. It wasn't sort of mandated. It's run by some folks in our service team, actually, because they meet everybody at the start, and then they start to realize, well, not everybody does, and how do we get them connected? And so they'll take you and say your department and figure out, like, are you likely to spend time with this person day to day in your day to day role? And if not, you're a great candidate to go out on, to be paired up with someone else who put their hand up and said, I'd like to meet some more people. And so you just get these cross company connections happening that you wouldn't happen otherwise. And to my mind, that has a bunch of benefits. One is, I believe it's shared history with people. It kind of, binds you to a place. But it also means, the next time you look over at, let's say, the finance department, and if you hadn't met anybody there before, but now you just went out on one of these things, you feel a little more connected, and it's a little less sort of far away, if you will. And I think all of that just contributes to creating the kind of environment people would rather be in, where the place feels small, even if we're growing and getting big.
I like that it's an opportunity and not a necessity. You're not forced to. It's voluntary. One of the cool things is that, again, making friends at work doesn't always, we're used to, TV shows like The Office and things like that, where, you go into it watching the humor, the cringeworthy humor of kind of the friction of coworkers. But anybody who's watched the entire series knows that in the end, like, they really do all end up kind of being like extended family. And that's rightfully so, because you spend so much time in the workplace with your coworkers. Why not feel a stronger sense of kinship with them?
Why not? Right? Why not? And I think sometimes you just need to ease people on the pathway to make that happen, because you can show up every day and just go to your desk and plug away on your computer, depending on what you're doing. We're a little more collaborative than that by nature, but why not? Why wouldn't you want to have an experience where you spend, I don't know, let's call it at least 40 hours a week, probably, more than with any group in your family often, sad as that may be in this day and age, but also true of your waking hours. Why wouldn't you want to have that experience be a little more familiar, a little more enjoyable, right? And I think that's, I hate the notion of people who go to work at a place where they can't stand the people there. People do it. But I don't get it.
Yeah, it's always better to have, comrades in arms, again, when you're doing something that long, day in and day out. I'm curious, what does the workspace, like the layout, look like for you? I know you kind of almost float around the building, but what's the rest of it look like? Like, let's talk about this work environment a little bit.
I'll start with the principles through which we designed it. I like to design for what I call the 3 C's in office space. So connectedness, collisions, and collaboration. And so, what connectedness is about is, to me, it's you want to not feel like you close the door and it's just you in a room. right? And if you go into an office. So, for example, I am sitting in a room right now, but the room has, two walls of glass on it, and I can see probably 50 people right now, and they can see me. They're sitting largely in open, like it's basically open concept. They're really, we have kind of meeting rooms versus, offices for people. So that the sense of being connected. The other thing is the office space that we came into has a massive floor plate. And so, we're about 300 people on one floor, and it just runs, and you can see pretty much from one end to the other. There's a corner, so you can't see the last little bit. But all of that just leads to a sense of like, hey, we might be a large organization, but look over there and you see like kind of all the departments. And that, I think that contributes to the sense of the place being a little smaller. So collisions is around how do we architect the space so people will, be naturally find themselves walking a handful of smaller paths. Things like to get to the kitchen, there's only one way. And it's, by the way, it's central. You got to walk by a lot of people to get there. The bathrooms are kind of strategically located so that, people bump into each other, and you have those hallway conversations where, things happen, and you catch up with somebody like, oh, I didn't know you were working on that. And geez, maybe I should let you know about this. That is actually really important. The larger you get to kind of like fight that scale. And then collaboration is just really around the workspaces themselves. It's open concept. We offer everybody like a stipend so they can buy headphones if they want to like zone out and be super productive. But it's kind of open concept for desks. It lets us move them around a whole bunch. The meeting rooms are filled with whiteboards. And so, forgive me for kind of rambling on a little bit, but those are the, three things we design our office space around. So what does it actually look like? Well, it looks like, meeting rooms that, you can see into. So you can always see people, the senior leadership team and everything. We have a couple rooms, for HR reasons or, long range planning reasons that, you don't have as much visual ability to look into. But, those are like 1% of the meeting rooms. It kind of looks like a lofty converted space, kind of brick and beam sort of environment otherwise.
Very cool. It sounds like you've got a good mix between about three different things. I mean, not the things, definitely the things you mentioned. I was going to say not the things you mentioned. No, definitely the things you mentioned, but also this kind of balance between focused work individually, focused work as a group, and then large communal interaction.
Try and find that balance. We really do. We just came up from every week we feed everyone lunch and host a thing called Shorthands, which is like one of those more communal things, right? It's optional, right? We probably usually get about a third of the company who come and sit and listen to presentations from other people in the company with projects they're working on and results and did you know, and maybe some educational stuff or a guest speaker, that kind of thing. So yeah, that would be more communal. And the other parts, yeah. I mean, ultimately a company is kind of a little community, right? And so having these different forums to get people together and to radiate information, that kind of thing, it's critically important.
Well, and again, you having the ability right now to sit down in a room where you and I are talking, and of course you don't want all the background noise from everywhere else in the building to bleed into this conversation that we're recording, or even if you were literally trying to sit there and work on something that's you and you alone. I mean, I guess some buzz kind of helps depending upon who you are and what your work style is, but you've got these, pockets of places where there's semi-visual, less visibility or more visibility or blocking stuff off to a certain, you've got like that spectrum, in other words, which is really cool.
Yeah, no. And we realized we didn't have enough of some of the pieces. And so we created like a library, right? Where it's like, you can go in there and work, but you can't talk, right? And then there's some other spaces where you can go to, which, are not desk spaces, and you can go and work and you can talk, but, mostly people are there to just work. So, don't push it. It takes a whole bunch of these pieces to make it all happen and deliver all the experiences for people, given the context they're hunting at the time.
September is National Life Insurance Awareness Month. Most people aren't aware of that. In fact, most people aren't aware they need life insurance at all. That's why 40% of people don't have it. But getting life insurance doesn't need to be difficult or expensive. Right now, prices are the lowest they've been in 20 years, and Policy Genius has made it easier than ever to get covered. Policy Genius is an easy way to get life insurance online. In just 2 minutes, you can compare quotes from the top insurers to find the best policy for you. And they don't just make life insurance easy. They also compare disability insurance, renter's insurance, and health insurance. If you care about it, they can cover it. So if you're looking for a good reason to buy life insurance, here's 3. It's National Life Insurance Awareness Month. Prices are at a 20-year low, and Policy Genius makes it easy to get the right policy for you. Go to policygenius.com. Get quotes and apply in minutes. You can do the whole thing on your phone right now. Make sure to use the promo code BEYOND. Again, go to policygenius.com. Get quotes and apply in minutes, and you can do the whole thing on your phone right now. Policy Genius, the easy way to compare and buy life insurance. We're kind of moving from the company at large, big, and then smaller down into you individually. So let's just continue that path of that funnel. So I want to know more about how it is that you do your work. What's your workflow like? And if it's even possible, what's an average day for you look like?
I've lost the plot on what an average day for me is. I think, if I'm at the office, I'm largely with people start to finish. So I have very little kind of independent working time. And funnily enough, I'm trying to work some of that back into my days. But my days are, I spent the last couple of days on planes. It's you really don't know, but generally meeting with people. And let's start there, and I'll let you kind of see where you want to take it from that kind of high level. Gosh, I couldn't tell you what a normal day looks like.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm asking here is, in the conversation that we just talked about in terms of what the workspace looks like, is there an office that's just Mike's somewhere?
So we worked for years and years and years. There was not. There's a room where I conduct a lot of like one-on-one meetings. It's this one that I'm in right now with 2 glass walls. It's actually stationed near the restroom. So I see lots of people and lots of people see me. Given the nature of my role, I generally do. I have a senior team who I spend time with one-on-one. And so it's harder to do that stuff in open space. And since I'm a meeting most of the time, it's nice to have a room that's largely dedicated to me. But then I'm out in other meeting rooms, meeting with all kinds of other folks, lots as well. And then obviously have commitments outside the building.
So it's good that it's got that glass there, because then people see that you're present as often as you are present, even though, you just said you've been on planes a lot lately.
Yeah, I'm a super big believer of that. And it also, present and kind of not hiding. By the way, the same place is at the top of the stairs. So anyone going to lunch or whatever, I deliberately chose a place that was super visible. And the intent there is to make me, less scary because I'm not working behind closed doors, and more accessible, so you can walk up and bump into me sort of more naturally. And it also helps me, smile, and people are walking by. Well, we're on this call, and I'm giving people a smile as they go about their day. So for a whole bunch of reasons, that's how it is. We didn't build it to be my office, the one I'm in, but I just happen to do a lot of work in this room, and it's kind of accidentally sort of become, if there was one, it is one.
So then it's available for others to use in that same kind of fashion if needed those days you're not around.
Yeah. Sure thing. Yeah.
Or even if you are around, but you're in other parts of the building doing different things, it's still there. How do you, if you really need to focus, would you go into the library where it's, nobody's talking and that way you've got the ability to really focus? Or how does that work with you? Because I know some people, they get easily distracted or not. Where on the spectrum do you maybe put yourself?
Well, if I'm being candid, I would say, and I think this happens, periodically, but I think I'm at a place right now where I'm more aggressively reevaluating where my time goes. And, I think the past few years building the company up, getting it to where it is, I've had the bias of I should always be working with people on stuff. And probably, groups of people and moving things along. I'm now actually starting to think do I need more think time? And I camped out. I've been kind of writing a book actually in aid of sort of scaling our culture. It's about 72 pages so far. It's for internal consumption. And, to do that, I parked myself down in a room where I was, if people really needed to find me, it was clear where I was. It was kind of on the floor where our kitchen is. But I sort of closed the door and worked in there. So I wasn't as interruptible. The downside of the way I work is, I can sit for about 4 to 7 minutes tops before someone will interrupt me. And that's kind of the nature of being an organizational leader. So it's harder to get that, shut the door think time. And I used to think of like evenings and weekends as my time to do that. And I'm trying to bring that into my work week a little more right now, because it's not sustainable to not have it be that way. And I think it is appropriate, given some of the longer range nature to the work I do, to spend some time thinking and planning and such.
I think it's good to hear that somebody who is this successful and a company that is this successful has to refine and re-engineer, reinvent what does the day-to-day look like? What does, in terms of the expectation, self-expectations versus external expectations throughout the workflows based on what is needed from them at the time. Like, again, if, like you said, you're creating this book that's for internal company consumption. Well, that's not a normal thing. That's a thing that you're doing for a short season and then you're done. And then, so you don't need as much focus time. But again, you even reconsidering, what, I need more think time, and where and when you're going to fit that in is something that I think it's encouraging for us to realize, we can't just assume we have all the answers and never change.
Yeah, you're never done, right? You are never done. And, it could come up that, one project gets done, very successfully, and I get a bunch of time back, and that'll change where I should focus myself. Or, more commonly, it's like, oh, wasn't planning on that. What are you going to do about it, right? And does that influence, where your time go in a material kind of way? So, I think it's always in flux. The key to it is not lose the plot on what your actual priorities are, because I think if you just get sideswept by things that are coming at you, you're not going to be very effective. It's not always easy to manage, but that is actually kind of the job.
One of the other cool things about your workflow that I did learn about in some of the research here is that you're a fan of using the Moleskine notebook and just a ballpoint pen and going very analog with your tools. And I really admire that. And I think that may be, honestly, one of your strengths when it comes to that think time, because there's tons of studies out there, and, I could link all up to all of them, but that you actually have a different connection to the work when you use those type of tools. Is that what you've found?
Oh, that is positively my experience. Like, if I look at my phone, it's like I get sucked into another universe. Like, it just happens. And that could be an iPad or a computer. And so, if I want to be more present in a meeting, having a Moleskine is one way to do that. Jotting down your notes, you take different notes. I will say I grew up going to school at a time when, people learned cursive and learned how to write and whatever. And so who knows in 20 years if people, they'd even conceive of carrying around a Moleskine, but I find it helpful. And it's where I generally dump the stuff that I know is going to, be at the back of my mind if I don't write it down, so I can free up more space to focus on whatever I need to be focused on.
I imagine that also contributes to your ability to focus no matter what location you're in, based on the fact that you're using those analog tools.
I believe so. Others may differ. I feel I'm strongly impacted by devices. I would say adversely from a concentration standpoint. And that's why, for example, I turn my phone off every night at 9. I probably don't go to sleep till 10:30 or 11, but I need 90 plus minutes of, time where I'm not staring at a device. And then I try to read. And then weekends, like, Friday night at 7 till, Sunday night at 7, I don't look at my phone. And it's to kind of recharge and not get sort of dragged into that, that digital universe that, there's a whole world in my phone. There's a whole bunch of people trying to get a hold of me and me trying to get a hold of them. It just, it takes me out of being present here and takes me there, and they're not the same place.
Okay, I got to reiterate what you just said. You literally turn your phone off Friday night at 7 and don't touch it again till Sunday night at 7?
Yeah, I might scan for text messages, like maybe. I generally try not to on Saturday. Like, I don't want to look at my phone on Saturday. I need a break.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel different, and i.e. less good if I'm looking at my phone or I'm doing work. Like, that's kind of my definitely do not work day is Saturday.
I love that you're doing that. One, because it's healthy and not a lot of people do that. But two, as the head of the company, that's a great example of leading by example.
I like to think so. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? There are times when you're going to be, trading emails with a small team who's working on something like crazy at 11 p.m. But, those need to be, very far between. And it's probably just my senior team. And you don't want to expose that to the rest of the company because you don't want to have the expectation they always have to have their phones on, right? Like that's a bad thing. So yeah, I appreciate that. I don't think I understood the importance of that a long time ago. And now things like I'll write an email maybe at 8:30 p.m. But I won't send it till 9 in the morning because I don't want somebody to get it off hours. Depending on what the sort of the message is. I think that is very important for your mental health and others, right? You need a break. You need to recharge. You need to be able to be focused, and otherwise you burn out.
Well, and honestly, that's you living out the culture that you've set up because you're not showing that at any given point, Mike's going to potentially write an email and send it. And I better be checking my email a lot more often just to make sure that, I don't get something from him or somebody else.
That is the example I am trying to set.
Yeah. Very cool. So what, if you're using primarily, ballpoint pen and Moleskine notebook and you're putting your phone away, obviously you have your phone with you at times, and you're not averse to using technology. That's what's making this conversation possible. But what other kind of technology are you using?
The rest of the time, I certainly have my phone, right? I've got my earbuds in now because I like those, the number of calls that I do, they're helpful. I'm relatively more simple. I don't use a lot of apps or what have you to get my work done. I got the Moleskine, the phone, my inbox, my phone. I kind of like being that simplistic about it and almost that boring. I'm starting to play a little around with sort of just even like note-taking things. And lots of people have used things like Evernote. I'm starting to use the baked-in notepad on iOS. But, really, I really just try to keep it that simple because, there's enough complexity otherwise. And if you're switching contexts and switching apps and all these other things, I sometimes find that people who are most, sort of freakishly into productivity have so many tools that they use to get there that I half wonder if they're getting there,
Yeah. Your simplicity is, just in this whole conversation, your simplicity is coming through and it's definitely kind of a Zen vibe that I'm getting where it's like, you know what? Like, no, I don't have to be all over the place frantic. It's very much, this is what I'm using. This is where I am. This is what I'm doing. And where I am, I'm present. I like this. I like it a lot.
I think, and that's been a journey. And I think I'll say the last few years of my career have been trying to become more and more present after years of kind of running around like crazy, right? And thinking that was the faster path and realizing now, hey, there's actually so much going on. It's unmanageable with that set of behaviors. And therefore, I actually need to sort of go to this, more mindful approach to things. Simpler tools, I do love to-do lists, by the way. Like I dump things in a to-do list until I can cross them off, and I love crossing them off. But yeah, I don't need a whole bunch more ways to do that. And I do want to be present because I'll be the most effective for the people that I'm with at that time if I am.
So you're a CEO, and some people would say, okay, so you've got to have like an assistant who, manages your calendar and books appointments and things like that. How much of that is involved with your schedule?
Yeah, I would say we got to about 200 people where I was doing that stuff myself. And if I had a do-over, I probably wouldn't go that long. I know one famous venture capitalist says, if a CEO doesn't have an assistant at 50 people, there's something wrong with them. So I guess there was something wrong with me for a long time. But it's very hard to switch context. Like I want to stay at, one level, but going down and figuring out times and dates is another thing. And that what I have found is I'm not able to do the higher order bit as effectively if I need to go down to do. I'm good at going from different elevations. Not everybody is, but I do find it is not the ideal. Let's put it that way. If you're doing the two, so I am grateful for and take the support of many people on my team in one form or another. But certainly my assistant Grace is a big help.
Very cool. Mike, I honestly am just kind of relaxed from this conversation. I feel pretty good learning more about FreshBooks, learning more about how you're running things. Honestly, this is big picture filtering down into the minutia of the daily activity and workflow in a way I haven't thought about or talked about in a while with anybody on this show. So I'm really excited to have been able to talk with you. I'd love to be able to push people towards not just FreshBooks, but anything else that you would be interested in having people take a look at.
That is a generous offer. Let me give you a couple things. So first of all, if you invoice, you need FreshBooks, go get your free trial at freshbooks.com. We are, 20 million people use the service since we started. We are a large accounting software platform with a specialty on invoicing, time and billing, that kind of thing. Go check us out. Please use us. That's one thing. I think the other thing, and I'm guessing you have some of these folks in your audience, but, I wrote a book called Breaking the Time Barrier. It's free. It takes an hour to read. What you may not know is been downloaded over 250,000 times, and it is about helping people, if you work for yourself and you charge for your services, think about pricing your services. And interestingly, it gets into thinking about time and productivity. So again, it's only an hour read. It's kind of written like a fable. You may find it interesting, even if you don't sell or services or expertise. But I encourage anybody who's got an hour and wants to see the world differently. It's kind of about value pricing and how to detach yourself from billing by the hour and kind of recognize more value from that. I'd encourage anybody to check that out if you're working for yourself. Certainly, if you're an invoice sending business or a small business owner who's just thinking about how much should I charge, what is my value.
And I can say this, as kind of an endorsement. I've read it a while ago, and it's really good. I need to actually pull it back out and revisit it again. So I'll link that up in the show notes to make sure everybody grabs that. It's great.
Well, thanks, Eric. I did not know. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So, Mike, it's been awesome talking with you, and I'd love to, maybe in the future have you back on the show and talk some more, dive a little deeper, go into different areas. But for now, we'll say goodbye, and thanks for being here.
Okay, awesome, Eric. Glad to have been here. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening.
Well, I want to say thanks again to Mike Mcderment for stopping by and having this conversation with me. I know that it was helpful to me to reaffirm the fact that we don't always have to be on. We can unplug. We can turn off devices. We can use devices for their benefits and then walk away. I really was encouraged to see that even a CEO of a successful company, that he knows he needs to put more thinking time into his routine. But I'm curious what you got out of it, and I'd love to know if you drop a comment in or shoot me a line over on Twitter. That's twitter.com/Eric with a K, the letter J, FISHER, or go to the show notes for this episode by going to beyondthetodolist.com/241. And if you know of somebody who needs to hear this episode, share this episode with them. Would you do that favor for me? Thank you very much. And with that, I will say thank you for listening, and I will see you next episode.